You've had a remarkable success story over the last few years. It's amazing to read and learn about. Do you think you could have achieved that if you'd had a life imbalance, or do you think you kind of need to be a bit off the charts, mad, crazy, to actually pull off something like you've achieved? Is it possible to build and grow a successful enterprise like you've done and have balance, or do you think there's a compromise and a trade-off that is always inevitable?
Yeah, I mean, I think 99% of the people I meet that do something highly successful in a short enough period of time, there is this relatively long burst of time where it is crazy and fast-paced and intense, and you compromise on a few different things related to sort of peace of mind. And
What did you have to compromise on?
I do think it's just finding that sort of sanity every day. Have a little bit of it every day. I used to have that, I think, more than 5 years ago. I definitely don't have it now, and so that's been the biggest compromise. It hasn't affected my health, but I think that's a short-term thing. If I don't watch it, it is going to have an impact long term. So probably 5-6 years is a good amount of time to run on that kind of battery or energy, but you definitely take away from the longevity of your health.
Mm-hmm. In the last 5 to 10 years, has your lack of balance caused you health problems, relationship issues, outside of work?
No, and I mean, I've been very lucky. So my, in a way, running at that fast pace, family-wise, my family's in America. So in terms of what I was born into, we talk a lot, but I'm not with them all the time. So it does allow me the time to be able to run at this pace. In the last few years that I've been married, what my husband's actually done is also enter the tech industry and my space. So we get to see each other a lot and work with each other and socialize with each other also. So that wasn't really planned, but it's really a boon to me and us and our relationship that we're able to do that. And we've taken our son into the mix as well. And so by the time he was 14 months old, he had traveled to 10 countries already, because we take him around everywhere, whether it's work or for fun. So.
For me, happiness is really when harmony exists either around my friendships or my personal relationship. And that whole work-life balance that everybody talks about? I know that it's really tough to be happy at home and happy in business or at work or whatever. And if you can manage that, I have in recent years, then that's not just happiness, that's bliss.
You've clearly been a very full-on, hands-on chief executive. How hard has it been to juggle being a single parent?
It's been quite difficult. My daughter was 7 when my ex-husband and I separated, and from being 7 till the age of 12, we had live-in housekeepers. But the last housekeeper we had when my daughter was 12 left us to go and look after babies, which is what she really enjoyed. And Joe and I discussed it and decided that we'd try and manage on our own. And there are times when it was very difficult, but we did manage on our own. And actually, I look back and think that was great, really, because we got a very, very close bond because there were only the two of us. But it was difficult. I remember one day picking Joe up from school, which I did very rarely, and being very proud of myself that I managed to get off work early enough to go and pick her up from school. And as I was driving along the drive to pick her up, as I was getting near to the school, I saw somebody stood on the pavement, and I thought, gosh, that looks like Joe. And I pulled up alongside her, wound the window down and said, "Fancy a lift?" And she promptly burst into tears, and I got the time wrong. She'd been stood there an hour waiting for me.
Oh, dear.
So I didn't always get it right, but yeah, it was a challenge. It was a challenge, but we've got an incredibly close relationship as a result of that.
So if you were advising young mums or dads or families today where both parents are working or there's a single parent family, what advice would you give them about how to get that balance right?
I think I would advise to get help. I think it's very difficult being a single parent and having to take responsibility for everything like the school run or whatever. I would get help, and I would try and get as much flexibility in my working hours as I could. I have a lot of people who work from home, perhaps a couple of days a week, so that they can sort of share the load with a husband or wife. And I think it's really important that you spend the weekends together as well.
What was the catalyst to you thinking that you should take a sabbatical?
Part of the catalyst was my wife and I talking about having a third child, and her saying I needed to help a lot more with the third baby. And me wanting to spend time with one of our children when they were still a baby. So that led me to think, well, how could I do that? I think part of it had been spending 10 years at Teach First, just beginning to feel a bit tired, and 10 years of startup, of continuous growth. And part of it was working with my chairwoman at the time, Dame Julia Cleverton, who's brilliant at helping me think this through, was really how can I ensure that there's a clear change at Teach First. Our first 10 years versus our second 10 years, where Teach First goes from being a startup entrepreneurial organization to a major member of the establishment of the.
What did you learn about yourself during that 6-month sabbatical?
First of all, that I sort of think like I'm not really a workaholic, that I really enjoy taking time off. That's the first thing. After a few weeks, I realized I'm actually quite enjoying just spending time with my family and taking a few classes and things like that. I think I learned that there's a lot of things I was getting involved in at Teach First, where Teach First had reached the point they didn't need me anymore, and that was very. I found that very invigorating and very freeing, and really great, that I realized there was all these areas I'd gotten involved with where actually people were making better choices without my involvement. And that was, to me, a very exciting, realization that I can get involved in all sorts of new things. I don't have to deal with these things anymore. That I actually built an organization that was self-contained, that wasn't reliant on any one person, which to me had always been a major goal for me. And I realized I really love my family and enjoy spending time with my wife and children, which was nice to remember.
And how did it feel at the end of the 6 months?
At the end of 6 months, I was excited to come back to Teach First. One of my thoughts during that time was, to really think, do I still have that fire in my belly? And I'd say by month 5 or 6, I was really thinking, okay, I'm ready, I'm excited. The last few weeks I was kind of thinking, I kind of want to get back already. So it was a good amount of time, but it made me realize that I can start focusing on sort of the next generation of what Teach First is doing. And that as an organization we can do so much more to really turn the dial nationally and solve this major, I would say the most major civil rights issue in England right now. And it's something that really can be solved, and we could be a major player in solving it.